The grief counselor's office smelled like lavender and lies. I sat in the overstuffed chair that was supposed to make me feel safe, staring at the box of tissues on the side table that I'd used every week for the past 6 months. Dr. Patricia Winters sat across from me with her clipboard and her kind eyes and her gentle voice that was supposed to help me process my loss. But you can't process a loss that never happened. Sarah, Dr. Winters said softly, you mentioned last week that you've been having dreams about Emma. Do you want to talk about them? I looked at her, really looked at her, and wondered what she would say if I told her the truth. That the dreams weren't dreams at all. That I'd seen my daughter 3 days ago in the frozen food aisle of a Target in Cincinnati. That Emma, my beautiful, impossible, supposedly dead daughter, had been very much alive, holding the hand of a woman who was not me. They're just dreams, I said instead, because I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Wasn't ready to let the truth shatter the carefully constructed grief that my husband had built around me like a cage. Dr. Winters nodded sympathetically. Grief can manifest in many ways. It's normal to see her in your dreams, to imagine what she might look like now if. She'd be 7, I interrupted. If she had lived, she'd be 7 years old and she'd be starting 2nd grade and she'd probably still hate broccoli but love strawberries and... I stopped because my voice was breaking, and because even after 6 months of therapy, I still couldn't get through a session without crying. Except this time, the tears were different. This time, I was crying because my daughter hadn't died in a car accident when she was 18 months old. She'd been stolen from me. And my husband, the man I'd trusted, the man I'd grieved with, the man who'd held me through countless sleepless nights, had been the one to take her. The police officer who came to our door that night had kind eyes and a terrible job. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," he said, and I knew immediately that something was wrong because nobody knocks on your door at 11 p.m. with good news. "Yes," my husband David stepped forward, his hand finding mine automatically. We'd been married for 5 years, together for 7. I knew the feel of his palm against mine better than I knew almost anything. "I'm Officer Rodriguez. May I come in?" We let him in because what else do you do when a police officer asks? We sat on our couch, the blue one we'd bought at IKEA when we first moved in together, the one Emma had spit up on and drooled on and eventually learned to climb. Emma, our daughter, our perfect, beautiful 18-month-old daughter who was supposed to be at David's mother's house for the night. "There's been an accident," Officer Rodriguez said, and the world tilted sideways. David's hand tightened on mine. "What kind of accident?" "A car accident on Route 75. Your mother's vehicle was struck by a drunk driver. I'm so sorry to tell you this, but she didn't survive. Neither did the child who was with her." The sound that came out of me wasn't human. It was something primal and broken, the sound of a mother learning her child is dead. David pulled me against his chest. I felt his body shaking, heard him asking questions. "Are you sure? Could there be a mistake? Can we see her?" While I just screamed into his shirt until I had no voice left. The officer was saying something about identification, about the morgue, about next steps. David was nodding, his voice steady even though I could feel his heart hammering against my ear. "I'll handle it," he said. "I'll take care of everything. Sarah can't, she shouldn't have to." "Of course," Officer Rodriguez said gently. "Take all the time you need. I'm so sorry for your loss." After he left, David and I sat on that couch and fell apart together. Or at least, I fell apart. David held me while I sobbed, while I screamed, while I eventually went numb and silent because there were no more sounds left inside me. "I'll take care of the arrangements," he whispered into my hair. "You don't have to do anything. I'll handle it all." And I let him, because I was destroyed. Because I couldn't imagine having to identify my baby's body, having to plan her funeral, having to exist in a world where she didn't. So David handled everything. He identified the bodies. He arranged the funeral. He picked out a tiny white coffin that I couldn't bear to look at. He chose the burial plot, the flowers, the readings. I attended my daughter's funeral in a black dress I didn't remember buying, standing beside a grave I'd never wanted to see, listening to words that didn't bring comfort, because how could words bring comfort when your child was dead? David stood beside me, his arm around my waist, holding me up when my legs stopped working. His mother's family was there. Our friends. My parents flew in from Seattle. Everyone cried and hugged us and said things like, "She's in a better place, and at least she's with her grandmother now." And I wanted to scream at all of them that there was no better place, that Emma should be here, that she should be alive. We buried an empty coffin. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what we did. We stood in that cemetery and watched them lower a box into the ground, and I thought my daughter was inside it, and I wanted to die too. But Emma wasn't in that coffin. Emma was in Ohio, living with a woman named Jennifer Hartley, who thought she was adopting a child whose mother had died of complications during childbirth. I wasn't supposed to be in Cincinnati. I was supposed to be in Columbus for a work conference, my first business trip since Emma died. My boss had been gentle but firm. "Sarah, you need to get back out there. Working from home isn't healthy anymore. This conference will be good for you." I'd agreed because everyone kept telling me I needed to move forward, needed to rejoin the living, needed to start healing. 6 months was apparently the socially acceptable amount of time to grieve a child before people started getting uncomfortable with your sadness. The conference was exactly as boring as I'd expected. Corporate presentations about marketing strategies and quarterly projections. I sat through them in a fog, the way I did everything now, barely present in my own life. On the last day, I decided to skip the closing remarks and drive around instead. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed to move, to go somewhere, to feel like I had any control over anything. I ended up in Cincinnati because I missed the exit for the highway. Ended up at Target because I needed to use the bathroom and buy water. I was walking through the frozen food section, not really looking at anything, when I saw her. A little girl with Emma's exact shade of honey brown hair, Emma's dimples, Emma's small nose and rosebud mouth. She was probably 6 or 7 years old, wearing a purple t-shirt with a cartoon character I didn't recognize, holding the hand of a blonde woman in yoga pants who was studying the label on a bag of frozen peas. My heart stopped. It was impossible. I knew it was impossible. Emma was dead. Emma had been dead for 6 months. This was just another little girl who happened to look like my daughter, the way dozens of other little girls had looked like her in grocery stores and parks and restaurants, sending me into panic attacks and crying jags. Except this little girl had a birthmark on her left forearm, a small, pale brown mark shaped like a crescent moon. Emma had that exact birthmark. I stood there frozen, my basket of random items slipping from my hand and clattering to the floor. The woman looked up at the noise, smiled apologetically, and started to move away. "Wait," I heard myself say. The woman paused, looking at me with mild concern. "Are you okay?" "Your daughter," I said, my voice barely working. How old is she?" The woman's expression shifted slightly, that universal parent wariness when a stranger asks about your child. 6, she said carefully. "Why?" 6. Emma would have been 7 in 3 months, but if this woman had adopted her when she was 18 months old, she might not know her exact age. Might have been told something different. She looks like someone I knew," I managed. "What's her name?" Now the woman definitely looked uncomfortable. "Listen, I don't mean to be rude, but—" "Lily," the little girl said, looking up at me with Emma's eyes, with my eyes. "My name is Lily." "Not Emma, Lily." The woman, her adoptive mother, I was already certain, gently pulled the girl closer. "Come on, sweetie, we need to finish shopping." "Wait, please," I said, stepping forward. "I just need to." But they were already walking away, the woman's pace quickening, the little girl glancing back at me with curiosity. I should have let them go. I should have told myself I was being crazy. That grief was making me see things that weren't there, that this was just another child who happened to look like mine. But I couldn't. Because that birthmark, That specific, distinctive birthmark that Emma had gotten from my side of the family, that my mother had too, that I'd kissed 1,000 times on my baby's soft skin. I followed them through the store, keeping my distance, my hands shaking. I watched the woman, Jennifer, I would learn later, load items into her cart while chatting with the girl who called herself Lily. I watched them go through checkout, watched them load bags into a silver Honda CR-V. And then, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone, I took a photo of the license plate. I found Marcus Webb through a Google search. Private Investigator, Cincinnati Child Custody. His office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his cluttered desk. "You said on the phone this was about a possible parental abduction." I sat down and tried to organize the chaos in my head into something that sounded sane. 6 months ago, my daughter died in a car accident. At least, that's what I was told. 3 days ago, I saw her in a Target in Cincinnati. She was with a woman who I believe adopted her. I think my husband gave her away and told me she was dead. I waited for him to tell me I was crazy, to suggest grief counseling, to politely show me the door. Instead, Marcus Webb picked up a pen and pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the police officer at our door, about David handling all the arrangements, about the funeral I'd attended in a fog of grief. I told him about the little girl in Target with Emma's birthmark, Emma's eyes, Emma's face just slightly older. I told him about the license plate photo. Marcus listened without interrupting, taking notes, his expression neutral but focused. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any photos of your daughter, from when she was alive?" I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and showed him the hundreds of photos I'd been unable to delete. Emma as a newborn, Emma learning to crawl, Emma taking her first steps, Emma covered in birthday cake on her first birthday. Marcus studied them carefully. Then he looked at the photo I'd taken of the little girl in Target, blurry, taken from too far away, but clear enough. "That's the same child," he said quietly. The relief of being believed was so intense I started crying. "Okay," Marcus said, pushing a box of tissues across his desk. "Here, what we're going to do. I'm going to run this license plate, find out who this woman is, and start digging into your daughter's supposed death. I'm going to need documentation, the death certificate, the accident report, the funeral records, anything you have. And I'm going to need you to not tell your husband about any of this yet." "Why not?" "Because if he did what you think he did, we need evidence before he knows we're investigating. If he suspects you know, he might disappear or destroy evidence. We need to be smart about this." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "How long will it take?" "To run the plate and get basic information. A day. To build a case if this is what we think it is. Could be weeks. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been living without my daughter for 6 months," I said. "I can wait a few more weeks if it means getting her back." Marcus called me at work. I stepped out into the hallway, my heart pounding. "The car is registered to Jennifer Hartley, age 34, lives in Cincinnati. She's a dental hygienist, divorced, no criminal record. And according to adoption records I was able to access, she adopted a child named Lily Ann Hartley 18 months ago through a private adoption agency called New Beginnings." 18 months ago, I repeated. That's when your daughter supposedly died." "Yes. I also pulled the death certificate for your daughter. Emma Rose Mitchell, aged 18 months, died in a motor vehicle accident on Route 75. Cause of death listed as blunt force trauma. The certificate was signed by a Dr. Richard Hartwell at Cincinnati General Hospital." "So it's real. The death certificate is real." "The document is real. Whether the death actually happened is another question. I called the hospital. Dr. Hartwell did work there, but he retired 8 months ago. I'm trying to track him down. I also requested the accident report. It exists. It lists your mother-in-law's vehicle and mentions a child fatality, but here's the thing. There's no autopsy report on file for your daughter. What does that mean? It means either the records were lost, which happens sometimes, or there was no body to autopsy. I had to lean against the wall to stay standing. How is this possible? How could David fake this? The police came to our house. There was a funeral. People saw a closed casket, Marcus said gently. You never actually saw your daughter's body, did you? No, David said it was better that way, that I should remember her alive. I thought he was protecting me. He was protecting himself. Mrs. Mitchell, I think your husband arranged a private adoption and staged your daughter's death to cover it up. The question is why? I don't understand. Why would he do this? Why not just divorce me if he didn't want Emma? Why this elaborate? That's what we need to find out. In the meantime, I'm going to dig deeper into the adoption, into this New Beginnings agency, and into your husband's finances around the time of Emma's supposed death. Private adoptions can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000. If he paid for this, there will be a trail. After he hung up, I sat in that hallway for 20 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to think. My daughter was alive. My daughter was alive, and my husband had given her away. I went home and looked at David like I'd never seen him before. He was in the kitchen making dinner, pasta, my favorite, because he was always thoughtful like that, always taking care of me, always so concerned about my well-being. Hey, babe, he said, smiling when he saw me. How was work? Fine, I managed. How was yours? Same old. Oh, Dr. Winters called. She said you missed your appointment today. I had missed it because I'd been on the phone with Marcus Webb, learning that my dead daughter was alive. I forgot, I said. I'll reschedule. David came over and wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. You doing okay? I know this week has been hard. Every week was hard because I thought my child was dead. Because this man I'd loved and trusted had destroyed me and then held me while I fell apart. I'm fine, I said and gently pulled away. I'm going to take a shower. In the bathroom, I turned the water on as hot as I could stand and cried silently, my hand pressed over my mouth to muffle the sound. Marcus called with an update. I tracked down Dr. Hartwell. He's living in Florida now. I called him, said I was following up on some medical records. He remembered signing your daughter's death certificate, but he couldn't recall any specific details about the case. Said there were a lot of accident victims that night. But here's the interesting part. When I asked about the autopsy, he said he wasn't the medical examiner, so he wouldn't have been involved in that. His signature was just confirming the death, not the cause. So he never actually saw Emma's body. Apparently not. He was just the ER doctor who signed off on the paperwork. Now, I've been digging into the adoption agency. New Beginnings is a legitimate agency, but they specialize in private, closed adoptions. The kind where the birth parents want complete anonymity. According to their records, Emma, or Lily, as they knew her, was placed through them after her biological mother died during childbirth and the father couldn't care for her. That's not true. I didn't die, I'm right here. I know, which means someone provided false information to the agency. I'm working on getting more details, but these records are sealed. I might need to bring in a lawyer. Do it. I don't care what it costs. There's more. I've been looking into your husband's finances. 6 months before Emma's supposed death, he withdrew $50,000 from your joint savings account. Do you remember that? I tried to think back. 6 months before Emma died would have been. That was for the house renovations. We were going to add a sunroom. Did you ever get those renovations done? No, we postponed them after Emma died. David said it didn't seem important anymore. Because he used the money for something else. Mrs. Mitchell. I think he used that money to pay for the adoption. Private adoptions through agencies like New Beginnings can cost $40,000 to $60,000. The timing matches up perfectly. I sat down, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. He planned this, months in advance. He took our money and our daughter and he planned this whole thing. It looks that way. The question is still why. Has anything changed between you and your husband recently? Any marital problems before Emma's death? I thought about it. We'd been happy. Or at least I thought we'd been happy. David had been working a lot, some big project at his firm, but that was normal. We talked about having another baby eventually. We'd been planning that sunroom. No, I said. Everything was fine. We were fine. Sometimes people hide things well. I'm going to keep digging. In the meantime, you need to be careful around him. If he suspects you know something. I know, I'm being careful. But I wasn't sure how long I could keep pretending. How long I could share a bed with the man who'd stolen my child and let me believe she was dead. I started going through David's things. When he was at work, I searched his office, his emails, his phone records from 6 months ago, from a year ago. I was looking for something, anything, that would explain why he'd done this. I found it in a folder labeled insurance, buried in his file cabinet. Life insurance policies, one for me, one for Emma. Emma's policy was for $500,000. Beneficiary, David Mitchell. And underneath the policy was a letter from the insurance company, dated 3 weeks after Emma's supposed death, confirming the payout. He'd collected $500,000 on our daughter's death. Our daughter who wasn't dead. I sat on the floor of his office, holding that letter, and everything clicked into place. This wasn't about not wanting to be a father. This wasn't about marital problems or falling out of love. This was about money. David had given away our daughter and faked her death so he could collect the insurance payout. I couldn't wait anymore. I couldn't pretend for another second. When David came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the insurance documents spread out in front of me. He stopped in the doorway when he saw them. His face went carefully blank. "Sarah," he said slowly, "what are you doing?" "Emma isn't dead," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "You gave her away. You took out a life insurance policy on our 18-month-old daughter, and then you gave her to an adoption agency and told me she died so you could collect $500,000. He just stared at me for a long moment. Then he set down his briefcase and closed the door behind him. "How did you find out?" "Not that's crazy. Not what are you talking about. Just how did you find out?" "I saw her," I said. "In Cincinnati, she's living with a woman named Jennifer Hartley. She calls herself Lily now. She has Emma's birthmark, Emma's eyes. She's alive, David." He was quiet for a long time. Then he sat down across from me. "You were going to leave me," he said finally. "What?" "6 months before the accident, you were planning to leave me. I saw the emails to your sister. You were talking about divorce lawyers, about custody arrangements, about taking Emma and moving to Seattle." I had forgotten about those emails, forgotten about that brief period when I'd been unhappy, when David's work hours had gotten so long, when I'd felt like a single parent. I'd complained to my sister, asked for advice, looked into what a divorce might mean. But I'd never gone through with it. I decided to try counseling instead, to work on our marriage. "I didn't leave," I said. "I chose to stay. We went to counseling. Things got better." "But you thought about it. You were going to take her from me, take my daughter and move across the country. Do you know what that would have done to me?" "So you took her from both of us. You let me think my child was dead." "I couldn't let you have her," he said, and his voice was calm, rational, like he was explaining something simple. "You were going to poison her against me, raise her to think I was a bad father. I couldn't let that happen. So you gave her to a stranger." "I gave her to someone who wanted her, who would love her, who wouldn't use her as a weapon in a custody battle." I stared at him, this man I'd married, this man I'd trusted, this man who had sat beside me at our daughter's fake funeral and held me while I cried. "And the money?" I asked. "What about the insurance money?" "That was just practical. I'd already arranged the adoption. The insurance was just making sure I didn't lose everything in the process." "You let me grieve our child for 6 months. You watched me fall apart. You held me while I cried. How could you do that?" For the first time, something that might have been guilt flickered across his face. "I thought you'd move on eventually. I thought it would be better this way. Better than a bitter divorce. Better than shared custody. This way, Emma gets a stable home with someone who wants her. You get to move forward without the pain of losing custody, and I get to. You get to keep your money and your reputation and your perfect life, I finished, while I got to believe my daughter was dead. Sarah, I know you're angry. Angry, I'm calling the police, David. You're going to prison. He stood up quickly. Think about what that means. Think about what happens to Emma. She's 6 years old now. She thinks Jennifer Hartley is her mother. She's happy there. If you drag this into court, if you try to take her back, you'll traumatize her. You'll rip her away from the only mother she remembers. I'm her mother. Not to her. To her, you're a stranger. Is that really what you want, to put her through that? I sat there frozen because he was right about one thing. Emma, Lily, didn't know me. She'd been 18 months old when he took her. She wouldn't remember me, wouldn't remember her life before. If I went to the police, if I fought for her, what would that do to her? But she was my daughter, mine. Get out, I said quietly. Sarah, get out of this house, now, before I call the police and tell them everything. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he grabbed his briefcase and left. The moment the door closed behind him, I called Marcus Webb. The legal process was a nightmare. Marcus had been right. I needed lawyers, a family law attorney, a criminal attorney, people who specialized in cases like this, which apparently were rare but not unheard of. David was arrested and charged with fraud, insurance fraud, filing false documents, and conspiracy. The adoption agency was investigated. Dr. Hartwell was questioned, but ultimately not charged. He'd just been a tired ER doctor signing routine paperwork. Jennifer Hartley was devastated. She adopted Emma, Lily, in good faith, believing the story she'd been told. She loved my daughter for 5 years, raised her, been the only mother Lily remembered. The court appointed a child psychologist, ordered DNA testing, interviewed everyone involved. The DNA confirmed what I already knew. Lily was Emma, my daughter, my missing child who was never actually missing. But the psychologist's report was complicated. Lily was happy, well-adjusted, thriving with Jennifer. She had no memory of me, no memory of her first 18 months of life. To her, Jennifer was mom, and the idea of being taken away was terrifying. My lawyer explained the options. I could fight for full custody. I was her biological mother. I had rights. But it would mean traumatizing Lily, forcing her into a new life with a stranger, therapy for years to come. Or I could consider shared custody, visitation, a gradual reintroduction. Or I could do what Jennifer Hartley suggested in a tearful meeting brokered by our lawyers. I could stay in Lily's life as Aunt Sarah, visit regularly, be part of her world, and wait until she was older to tell her the truth. It was the psychologist who made the final recommendation: shared custody with a slow, careful transition, supervised visits at first, therapy for Lily to help her understand, time to build a relationship before telling her the full truth. I was her mother, but I'd missed 5 years. 5 years of birthdays and first days of school and bedtime stories. 5 years Jennifer Hartley had given her. The day I met Lily officially, not as a stranger in a Target, but as someone being introduced into her life, Jennifer brought her to a park halfway between our homes. Lily, this is Sarah, Jennifer said gently. She knew you when you were a baby. She's going to be spending time with us sometimes. Lily looked at me with Emma's eyes, with my eyes, and said, Hi. Hi, sweetheart, I managed, my voice breaking. She didn't know me, didn't remember me, but she would. David took a plea deal, 15 years in federal prison for insurance fraud. Among other charges, he'll be eligible for parole in 8 years if he behaves himself. I see Lily. I still can't call her anything else in my head, though I use Emma when we're alone now 3 times a week. Wednesday afternoons, Saturday mornings, and every other Sunday. We do art projects, go to the park, read books. Slowly, carefully, I'm learning who she is now, this child who was mine and is becoming mine again. Jennifer and I have an arrangement that no court could have ordered, but that works for us. She's gracious in a way I could never be. She knows what David did to both of us, to me and to her. She knows Lily is my daughter, but she also knows she's the one who raised her. Last month, Lily drew a picture of her family. She drew Jennifer herself, her cat Mr. Whiskers, and in the corner, carefully colored in purple crayon, she drew me. "That's Aunt Sarah," she told Jennifer proudly. "She's family too." Jennifer sent me a photo of that drawing. I cried for an hour. Next year, when Lily turns 8, we're going to start telling her the truth. Age-appropriate truth, gradual truth, but truth. She deserves to know where she came from, who she is. She deserves to know I never stopped being her mother, even when I thought she was dead. Dr. Winters, the grief counselor I'd stopped seeing after I learned the truth, called me last week. "Sarah," she said, "I heard about what happened. I wanted to check in, see how you're doing." "I'm okay," I said, and realized it was true. Better than okay, actually. "I can't imagine what you've been through, finding out your daughter was alive all this time." "It's been hard," I admitted. "But she's back in my life now. We're building something new." "And you, how are you processing everything?" I thought about it. About the rage I'd felt when I first learned the truth. About the grief that had transformed into something more complicated when I realized Lily didn't remember me. About the slow, painful process of building a relationship with my own child who thought I was just a family friend. "I'm learning," I said finally, "that love isn't always simple. That being a mother isn't just about biology or legal rights. Lily has 2 mothers now, me and Jennifer, and maybe that's not traditional and maybe it's complicated, but it's what's best for her." "That's very mature of you." "I don't know about mature, but I know I'm not going to lose her again. Not to death, not to distance, not to anything. She's alive. She's healthy. She's happy. And I get to be part of her life. That's more than I had a year ago." After I hung up, I looked at the photo Jennifer had sent me that morning. Lily, Emma, grinning at the camera, missing both front teeth, holding up a certificate from her swimming class. My daughter. Alive. I'd lost 5 years, but I had the rest of her life, and I wasn't going to waste a single day of it. Lily is 10 now, and she knows the truth. We told her on her 9th birthday, the 4 of us, me, Jennifer, and both our therapists. We explained it carefully, with love, with reassurance that none of it was her fault. She cried, asked questions we couldn't always answer, got angry, got sad, got confused. But she also understood, in the way children do, that the adults in her life love her and want what's best for her. She calls Jennifer Mom and me Mama Sarah. She splits her time between both our houses. She has 2 birthday parties, 2 Christmases, 2 mothers who would do anything for her. David writes letters from prison. Lily doesn't read them. Maybe someday she will, but for now, she's not ready. Last week, she came to me with a school project. "We have to write about someone who inspires us," she said. "Can I write about you?" "Why me?" I asked, surprised. "Because you never gave up on me," she said simply. "Even when you thought I was gone, you still loved me. And when you found out I was alive, you fought to find me. That's really brave." I held my daughter, my miracle, my stolen child, my found girl, and cried tears that were finally, tears of joy instead of grief. "You can write about me," I whispered into her hair, "but know that you inspire me too, every single day." She's alive. My daughter is alive. And this time, I'm never letting her go.